much looking forward to having you come here and speak. And so I thought we would probably ask just a couple questions to just kind of, get to know you a little bit more on a personal level, but also what was your journey, starting when you were younger, and, was there somebody that influenced you when you were younger that really made you want to do something different? And where did you get the energy?
Yeah, I don't know. The energy is just probably ADD, I don't know, something like that. But in terms of growing up, a huge influence on me was my grandfather. So I grew up on a citrus nursery in Southern California, and just spent a lot of time out in the field thinking. And a huge influence, like I said, was my grandfather. And my grandfather dropped out of high school and was an entrepreneur. And he grew more citrus trees than any person who ever lived. He grew about 600,000 citrus trees per year from the year that he married my grandmother until when he died. So he kind of holds that record. And every single year that he was in business, he would try and evolve the art of growing trees. So whether he's working on his grafting methods or his watering methods, he was always improving. And he taught me that something as simple as growing a tree is something that you could work on for your entire life and your entire career. And when he died, he had the most expensive trees available, and that's because they bore more fruit, they survived frost, they lived longer. In almost every respect, they were better trees. And so I learned a great deal about craftsmanship from him, and I also learned that, he used to say to me, too many people are trying to be successful doing stuff that they know nothing about. He's like, I grew up on a citrus nursery, this is what I do, I'm good at this is what I'm going to do. And I think I learned a lot from that. My grandfather had a number of limitations, kind of like we all do, right? But instead of trying to compensate for his weaknesses, I think he spent almost all his time capitalizing on his strengths. And back to your original question of why I have so much energy, I think I have energy because I've basically eliminated everything in my life that doesn't make me come alive. So there's not a lot of crappy stuff I have to do on a day-to-day basis because I've built my life around eliminating that. And I think that part of our public education system and private education, let's just say society in general, because it sounds like I'm blaming teachers or something like that. And my wife's a teacher. I think teachers are awesome. But part of what we learn is how to make these little compromises day in and day out. And we get to a place of learned helplessness where we're okay spending most of the day doing things that aren't squarely in our zone of genius, and we think that's normal because everyone else is doing it. So I think so much of success in life is about eliminating things, and once you do that, a lot of energy becomes available.
Okay. So what was interesting to me was you had mentioned how your grandfather learned how to grow the most amazing trees.
Yeah.
Well, right there, I see you do kind of the same thing. You're focusing in on analytics, you're focusing in, you're studying, you have a craft where you know what people are doing from the behaviors and just creating a better product.
Yeah.
So with that said, share with all of us what inspires you. I mean, what is going on in your industry that is just wow. You talked about the next greatest thing back then.
Yeah.
What about now? What is everybody talking about? What's the buzz and how is it stimulating you?
Yeah, I honestly believe, so we're in the marketing technology space, so I really think most people in that space have no clue what's going on, which is a huge opportunity. So I think what's happening in the world of marketing technology is in the pursuit of trying to build a better mousetrap, everyone is building these bigger and bigger, monolithic, all-in-one, we can do everything, piece of crap software suites, right? So if you use a CRM or you've got some marketing automation solution, whether it's HubSpot or Marketo or Infusionsoft, chances are you hate it. Or even if you, maybe you don't hate it, but it's the lesser evil. And And it's coming from this desire to deliver more value by doing more things, just bolting more crap onto whatever marketing automation solution you're using. And I think there's another way. So what we're seeing right now in the marketing technology space is that the number of apps every single year is basically doubling. And so it's leading to this fragmentation in our space, this incredible fragmentation where people still have their monolithic all-in-one marketing suite, but over time, year after year, they're using a smaller fraction of that all-in-one marketing suite. And it's creating an opportunity for us to be kind of a management layer that sits on top of that people plug all their marketing apps into so we can
Which
run.
is called Center.
Yeah, so we bought Center.com. It was super expensive. And we're deploying the first version of that probably in June.
Okay.
Hopefully before my twins come.
Yes, yeah, he's got some great training that he's kind of ramping up right now. In fact, it already started.
It starts on the 17th.
Okay, well, I saw some things already. But what's interesting is he wants to get in front of as many people as possible before his twins come. So hopefully that happens, but you've got some great programs going on. But
Yeah.
Just curious, if the first day
Yeah.
at LeadPages,
Yeah.
what was that like the first day? You started off with 5 people or 2?
Like 4.
4? Okay.
What's the difference?
Okay, what was it like the first day when you realized, okay, we got our domain?
Yeah.
What did you experience?
So, I mean, there really wasn't a first day. So, before LeadPages, we were doing marketing training and consulting, and I was blogging. And I really think that before you create a minimum viable product, you should have a minimum viable audience. So, I started off blogging, and I have a lot of rants in general, and, I thought the blog was just sort of a great venue to express my thoughts. So, back in the day, as a way to get clients for my training and consulting business, I would maintain this marketing blog. And my goal at first was just to get 3 subscribers a day, and I just hustled. Like if somebody left a comment on my blog, I would respond to that comment and ask them to subscribe. If someone linked to us, I'd ask them to subscribe. I'd find all the other blogs in our space, and I'd be the first commenter on those blogs, and I'd leave sort of what I thought was an intelligent comment and then a link back to my blog with a relevant article. And then if they came, I'd talk to them, or if they tweeted out my article, I'd send them a direct message on Twitter and ask them to subscribe. So I just straight hustled, my first 4,000 subscribers that way in a few months, just doing that. And so I was blogging about marketing, and it was a huge pain. I would write these 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 word blog posts about whatever rant I was on, and I'd spend a lot of time articulating whatever point I had. And at the same time that this was happening, a guy named Gary Vaynerchuk, who's a wine blogger, was extemporaneously making these wine review videos where he would just go to the wine shelf in his wine store, pull 3 wines off the shelf, and he would just taste them in front of the camera, completely uncut, review them, talk about them, say absurd things like this smells like gummy worms combined with dirt, and a little bit of horse piss, or whatever he'd say, and then he'd tie it to some region of Italy. But I mean, he drew from sort of a couple decades in the wine industry, and quickly created content. And I was pissed because he was getting millions of views on his videos, and I was getting 20 comments on my posts. So I was like, screw this, I want to make content like this, uncut, extemporaneously, in the moment. And that's what produced the kind of videos that you just saw up there. So what I did was, instead of writing these longer thought pieces that were just, an intellectual exercise, what I did was I would just take a landing page and I would review it. So I would just take a page that we had used in one of our clients' business. I would talk about why it works, how it works, any kind of data we had around that page, the page's conversion rate, and then we hired this 18-year-old from Brazil to make a template of the landing page that we were reviewing, and we just gave that away. And I hired this firm in India, paid them like $90 a page to turn it into HTML, and then so people would download these landing pages. So they would watch this video where I was talking about marketing pages and why and how they converted the data we had and the split test information we had, and we gave away the template. But quickly in the comments, people would say things like, how do I hook this up to MailChimp? How do I hook this up to Salesforce? How do I publish this to WordPress? How do I publish this to Facebook? How do I do all these things? And at first I was pissed. I was like, I am giving this away for free. I have to pay this kid in Brazil. I have to pay this company in India. And you're just like complaining because you're uploading it to WordPress like it's a plugin, and it's not. It's an HTML file, and now I have to tell you how to integrate it into MailChimp or something. So it's like, what do you guys want for free? And I was upset, but then very quickly I realized that the anger or the frustration from the blog audience pointed at a real need in the market. So at that point, I went to my blog audience and said, would you be willing to pay, at the time it was like $200 for a year of a product that I might make that would just do all this for you. You wouldn't need any coding experience, you wouldn't have to publish it. You could just customize these templates, publish it to your website, and it would handle the back-end integrations. And people were like, yeah, I'd pay for this. And I was like, awesome, then where's your money? So I went to the blog audience, I launched it, I got 200 people to give me $200, so that's 40 grand. Hired a developer, at least we got a few months of a developer, got the first version out in 3 months. And then from that point onward, we shipped a new template or integration or feature or something every single week. And it was bad at first. So people say that you shouldn't ship, if you're not embarrassed by your minimum viable product, then you ship too late. And so we were not embarrassed, we did not ship too late, we were embarrassed. It was an okay first product. It was buggy, but we just kept the velocity up and we kept on adding features. So it was this, there was no distinct moment in time. It was like, I was blogging, then the videos, then people asked, then we said, are you willing to buy it? And they were like, yeah, we were. Okay, here's the pre-sale. Okay, 3 months, 2 months later, the product came out, and they were like, well, what about these features? So it was just this very natural evolution, and I think that is the way that almost all good startups begin. They're organic. They're not sort of like, hey, I've been dreaming of this idea, and now I'm just gonna have this huge, unjustified leap of faith because everyone says it's this big emotional line in the sand, and I just have to suspend disbelief. There was no suspension of disbelief throughout this entire process. There was a bunch of incremental validated assumptions along the way, and that's what got us here. And I think one of the things that Silicon Valley has that we don't is a lot of people walking around who suspended disbelief, got completely hosed, and now are much more willing to call bullshit earlier on stupid ideas. And for a lot of people here, they're doing their first startup. They have some pie-in-the-sky idea. It's been this sort of intellectual thought experiment about what a hypothetical market might want, rather than sort of slogging it out of the trenches, and I think failure benefits us greatly. So that was a very long answer to your question.
That's good, because obviously you're talking about how success has come from a lot of work, listening to what the audience is looking for, and along with that there is failure, but great success afterwards. At what point, and then I want to definitely open it up to the audience for questions, but at what point was it the tipping point for you? At what point did you go, oh my gosh, what just happened? Does that exist?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's so when we got 200 people to pay us $200, we knew we had some kind of product market fit, and then every single month, the growth just built. So we put in more effort and we got more out. So there was some sort of correlation between input and output, and then sort of the multiplier on input to output grew over time. So we put 1x in, on month 1, maybe we'll get 2x out. We put 1.5 in the next month, maybe we'll get 5x out. There was there was a multiplicative effect. Like there was a momentum that was building. And I think that's when we knew, was when, every time we put our foot on the gas, the car went a little bit further.
So along with that, obviously there's investment and there's all types of financial support.
Yeah.
My question to you is, based on information that has been public, the great investment, things that have happened.
Yeah.
Do you think that it is better to bootstrap, or do you think it's better to look for investors? I mean, what is your opinion based on what you've experienced?
Yeah. I think it's great to bootstrap and stay super scrappy until you have product market fit and some sort of growing customer base. And then I would just advise people to raise money if they want to put fuel on the fire, but that's by no means required, and that's like my opinion. So it's kind of like these debates about marriage. Marriage, is it good or bad? And it's like, well, it kind of just depends on the arrangement you have in place and the person you're marrying, right? Like, so even though there's a 50% divorce rate, it doesn't mean that marriage is universally a bad thing. So I think it's the same with raising money. It's like, who are you working with, and like, what's the deal, And so I think there's a lot of variables in there. It's been great for us. It's been one of the best decisions we've made, but it's not like this binary thing. Like, every single deal is different. Every single investor is different. And then when you layer on top of that, sort of the dynamics of where you're at in the evolution of your company, the funding environment, there's just no blanket answer to that question. It's just a whole lot of it depends.
Okay. So with that said, does anyone have any questions that they would like to ask?
You raised the first $8 million and you didn't spend it. What were you saving it for?
Yeah, I mean, so we raised, we had raised $38 million before we spent any of it. And it's not that we were saving, like, it wasn't this deliberate thing. Like, we were hiring and all that stuff. Basically you raise money so that you can make bets that go further and further out into the future. So when you're bootstrapped, you're like, all right, how do we pay the bills next month, right? And maybe you do a little bit better. You're like, how do I pay the bills like 3 months from now? And then at that point, maybe you have a little cash in the bank. You're like, all right, so if I'm going to beat this competitor, I'm going to try this thing, which may or may not work. And if it does work, we'll gain this. But if we lose all of this money, right? And you can't afford to do that when you're bootstrapped. So we raised money so that we could place bigger and bigger bets. And I think that what happened was all the bets we initially made, like, they just all worked. And so we didn't need to go negative on those bets. I also think that it helped us just with peace of mind. We could tell people, like, move here. We could pay market salaries for engineers and developers without having to worry about the scarcity mindset that I think happens when you're bootstrapped. So it was a mindset thing. It was a security thing for our employees. It was like, I can sleep at night and still do these ambitious things. And it was to place bigger and bigger and longer term bets. So that's what it was for. Yeah.
Kind of more specific on the early funding.
Yeah.
I'm aware that you were quite a bit, but was it Series A first funding? Was there angel investing involved?
Yeah. So
talk about
yeah.
amounts and people you work with and things like that.
Yeah. So our Series A was with Arthur Ventures, Patrick Meaden, who's here locally and is an awesome person. I'm a huge fan of Patrick, and then also Seth Levine from the Foundry Group out of Boulder, Colorado. That deal happened really quickly, probably from the time I got back from vacation and had my first real call with them to when we had a term sheet. It was like 2.5 weeks, and I didn't have a pitch deck. I had a graph that showed our business going like that, but I didn't. And I had a lot of passion, like, want to talk marketing technology? Let's talk about it. So I had passion and we had growth, and I think that's what made that deal so frictionless I'm pretty impatient, and so I get deal fatigue really, really fast. If they're like, we got to do this, and what about this, and can we talk for the 5th time, and like, can you give us a list of 20 customers, and then, all right, there's this one thing we want to do, and it's just like, let's talk to someone who isn't going to give me deal fatigue, you know? So that was our Series A, and then we did a Series A1, which we did over voicemail, which was basically we were growing really fast, and we had early stage investors that were like, pretty soon we know that there's just no way we can put more money into the business based on what your future valuation is going to be. And so there's maybe an opportunity here, and that was like a voice message. I sent him a voice message back. It was like, all right, given where the market's at, like, I think this is the number we want. And they were like, okay, let's do it. All right, we'll do it with roughly the same contract we had last time. And that was over voicemail, so that was for $6 million, so that got us to 11. And then we did a $27 million deal with Founder Group, Arthur Ventures, and Drive Capital, which is a bunch of some ex-Sequoia guys out of Ohio. And that came together almost as fast as the Series A. So, you know, I think modern VCs are very open to moving quickly. They understand the dynamics. They're still going to do due diligence, but that due diligence isn't like that's after you've agreed on terms. They're like, all right, let's validate everything you said. Okay, checks out, we're good. But in terms of like sort of the upfront, like what are going to be the rough parameters of the deal, they can work that out very quickly.
Yeah. So, you said you had 200 early adopters who paid $200 a pop for whether it was minimum viable product or your first rollout. So,
yeah.
Was there any of those early adopters who thought the product was so bad that they wanted a refund or maybe just weren't satisfied? How are you able to support your early users while still rolling out new features and new functions and things like that?
Yeah, so great question. So the first thing I did was I gave them, in addition to the software, I created an educational course around landing page copywriting, landing page design, and I basically looked at like Udemy and I saw what people were paying $200 for, and I wanted to give them a course that was at least twice as much value as that. And so I spent a whole bunch of time creating that and gave that away. So even if the software was buggy, which it was, you know, they got the value. And then I had like weekly calls where I would answer questions, I would look at pages, I would write copy with them. So I wanted to give them something that exceeded the value of the software. And at the end of the day, even though the first version was buggy, they got locked in for lifetime to that early adopter rate. So there's plenty of people now that are paying like $17 a month or, you know, $200 a year for LeadPages, and they're getting a really good deal. So the hope was that they would get the value up front from these courses that I was giving away, and the copyright and the calls that I was doing where I'd optimize their pages, and they get this lifetime lock-in on price.
How did you figure out the perfect pricing model?
I reached like deep inside my gut and pulled it out. I was like, what was it at first? It was like it was like $17 a month, and I'm like, we could probably deliver $17 a month worth of value. People might pay for that. And they did, and we kept on, as we added more value to the product, we raised the price. But every time we raised the price, people who bought in at the lower price, we just sort of locked them in at that. So they were grandfathered into that. But there's really no art. I mean, there's no science to pricing. There's people who claim that there is. The truth is that of the things you can split test, price is like the hardest thing, in my view, to split test or to A/B test, because as soon as Group B figures out that Group A is getting a cheaper price. Then they get like a bunch of support calls, like how come someone else is getting it cheaper? And then you got to like figure that out. And and then people are taking to Twitter and they're upset. And then it can be really problematic. So I really advise people to come in at a meaningful number that they know represents the floor of what they want to charge, and then to raise it up. Because it's easier to raise prices than to reduce them. If you have prices pretty high, or if you have prices low and then you raise them, you can grandfather the old group in, and that, now they're like in for life because they've got this cool deal. But if you have a higher price point and you lower that, you've got to like transition your entire customer base to that lower price, and it might not even be the right price. You got to like move them all back up. It's a pain. So I like to start from the bottom and then go up like Drake.
Clay, so how do you feel about the local and national business economy, right? Your GDP's kind of flat. How do you project out hiring? That's what I want to know about sales, right? Like, how do you as a CEO think about the economy? Are you guys just growing so you don't have to worry about, think about your war chest? If there were to be a crappy economy, you'd be okay, right? Like,
Yep.
how much thought goes into that? What if scenario?
Oh, I don't know. So what's happening with I guess I just don't pay that close attention to global trends. Maybe I should. I think I would if we were further along. So we're Series B, and I think we are at least 5 years out from an IPO. So if we were closer to an IPO, I'd be paying close attention to what's happening in IPO markets. But that's just not a reality to us. We do have this war chest. We're probably in the midst of a bubble, or it's probably going to pop, or maybe it already has, and this is the extent of it. And in either scenario, we're probably not going to raise funds for another 2 years, 3 years. Things will have likely recovered. I think when we get into that window where we're 1 to 2 years away from an IPO, then I'm going to be watching that stuff like a hawk and looking at comparable companies and looking at revenue multiples for public market, for public stocks and stuff. But we're way too. I think the mistake that a lot of people make when they're first starting out is they think they have to have a plan ahead of time for exactly what they're going to do. And generally speaking, if you have that minimum viable audience, the feedback is coming out in real time, and you're having this very real dialogue with the market about the deal that they will take. So one advantage that salespeople have over people who do one-to-many sales or e-commerce sales is they can say things like, what are your objections? And then they can hear feedback. They can say, this is the price point, and then someone can give them feedback. And they're having this conversation with their customer in real time. They know when they send an email and nobody responds, or sometimes they'll send an email and they'll get an appointment for a phone call. So they get all this experience about the triggers of that customer and what makes them tick. And for some reason, marketers think that all that goes out the window when you're talking to a market, and that's just absolutely not true. The launch of a minimum viable product should be this active, real-time conversation you're having with your audience. If you're doing it the right way, people should be leaving comments on your blog post. People should be tweeting you back. You should be responding to every single one of those. You should be getting on the phone with people. You should be obsessing about how the market is responding to what you do. And in the midst of this conversation you're having with your audience, sometimes you'll find that some messages you put out there, whether it's an email or a blog post or social, whatever, some things get shared a lot, but they don't get a lot of comments. Some things get a lot of comments, but maybe they're not shared a lot. Other times, maybe it'll get someone to buy a product, but they don't comment or they don't share. And so you start learning how the market behaves in general. And I think that what's essential to pulling this off, and what I had, because I had this minimum viable audience that I had this relationship with, is I understood what their drivers were. I could finish their sentences for them. I understood what pissed them off. I understood where they lacked understanding. I knew where they needed help. And so it wasn't like my job was to be the perfect guesser. My job was to really be a leader, to take them on this journey and to pay attention along the way and to adapt what we were doing as a business based on the feedback they were giving us. And I think that when you interact with your market enough, you get to the point where you can really feel into it. And this is like woo-woo or whatever, but you have so many touch points with your market that you can feel the pulse of what's happening there and respond accordingly. So it wasn't all mapped out ahead of time. It's like tennis, right? Like we do something, like they kick the ball back, and it's this back and forth thing. And that's what we had when it was going on. And sometimes we guessed wrong, and sometimes we guessed right.
So kind of going off that, LeadPages does a very good job marketing focused sales.
Yeah.
What do you think the pros and cons are that in comparison to typical SaaS structure, having sales reps,
Yeah.
some marketing support, and will you continue that as you expand more enterprise if that's what Center is going to do?
Yeah. So your question is just like, what are the pros and cons of like a one-to-many e-commerce sales model versus a sales
sales focused
Yeah.
human interactions rather than the marketing?
Yeah, I think that for us, the deal size just didn't justify having a sales team. And I think when you're first getting started, you need a customer base that's willing to just pull out their credit card and buy. And the second you get into like gatekeepers and like 3 to 6 month sales cycles and all that stuff just adds too much friction to the system, and it's harder to experiment. So we want to put out an experiment and then see like the next day if it was successful. And when you're taking this one-to-one approach, it's hard to iterate that rapidly on your strategy, or at least it was for us in that market. I think, but that has a lot to do with my own personal DNA. I think CEOs of companies that are sales leaders and know how to sell into a specific market, know how to get through gatekeepers, have been in those trenches and been sales leaders at previous companies, and they want to start another company that serves that exact same market that they were selling into before, I think they can pull it off. Like Mark Benioff obviously pulled it off at Salesforce, and he's a sales guy, and there's plenty of examples of, Scott Dorsey from ExactTarget, probably the biggest Midwestern MarTech acquisition by Salesforce of like $2.5 billion. There's plenty of successes here from sales leaders, but that wasn't in our founding DNA. And now we do have a sales team, and we are going upstream, but we did it when we could afford to spend, a year plus figuring out how to make that work. And we are figuring it out, but that we would have been dead if we started out that way. But other companies not so much, because it's just what the founder knows how to do. It's a great question. Graham.
Hey Clay, I got more of a lighter question.
Okay.
Have you read the book Disrupted by Dan Lyons? The expose on HubSpot, and for that matter, do you watch Silicon Valley on HBO?
I don't watch a lot of TV. I'm just not I'm not that much of a visual person. But I am an auditory person, so I did listen to Disrupted, yeah. Do you want my thoughts on it, or?
Well, I'm just wondering if you dove into it, what you think of it.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Does your friend Kevin, who joined HubSpot?
Yeah, it's tough because like those guys and anyone who isn't like dead 2 years after they start a startup have accomplished a small miracle. You know, they give out there's this huge like award thing for startups, and it's like just you get awards for like not dying. Congrats, you survived. Here's an award. And so failure is so high, and what the guys at HubSpot, the guys and gals at HubSpot, there are 2 male founders. But what they accomplished was awesome and miraculous. And I think it's probably impossible that a company is going to get to that scale that quickly without just some amount of wreckage in their wake, you know? And you see that across the board, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Salesforce. You know, you've got people who often are starting their very first company. You know, they figured some things out, but they're far from being, you know, seasoned executives, and you wouldn't want them to be. And a lot of times they're just figuring it out as they go along, and we're figuring it out as we go along too. I'm sure someone could come along and write a book like that about us at some point in the history of our company. But at the end of the day, you know, they contributed something real to the world. You know, they might not be making a dent in the universe. They might not be changing the world. They're probably not changing the world. We're not changing the world yet. We hope to someday. But, you know, Elon Musk started out with PayPal, and that's kind of a crappy product. But everyone starts somewhere and bootstraps their way from that. So, yeah, have they made mistakes? Sure. Could a gifted satirical writer with a chip on his shoulder criticize things? Yeah. But this also exists within the broader context of the insanity that is the complete insanity that is the startup world. And I think that insanity is characteristic of what we're all doing and of founders in general. And so these kinds of things are going to ensue. So like as someone who's going to have a product that's competitive to HubSpot, it's easy for me to sort of like chuckle at some of the things in there. But at the end of the day, it's hard for anyone to judge because we just don't know what's going to happen.
Any more questions?
You were talking about competitive marketplace.
Yeah.
When you talked about that, what were you thinking about attractive talent from anywhere? Or is this like more local market? Or when you're looking for talent, where is it coming from?
Oh, anywhere we can get it. Anywhere. Like the talent is so hard. It's freaking hard. Like we have 3 full-time recruiters, 3.5 full-time recruiters, and we still hire external recruiters. And it's what I and my founder spend maybe a third of our time doing. There are no easy wins there, ever. And once in a while there are, but no, it's hard. Like everything is hard. Like everything is hard, and I think the people who succeed are just willing to invest 10x more what the other person is to make it work. Or maybe the people who win are just calibrated to the reality that it's going to be really hard. And so when it is as hard as we think it is, we don't give up. We're like, yeah, of course it's freaking hard. Everything is hard every single day, and that's why I'm working 16 hours a day, and that's why we're winning and these other folks aren't. You know.
But if you're hiring a rock star from Silicon Valley, is that disruptive to the market of what's happening here in the local economy, the local higher space? You don't feel that right now.
Oh, like is it disrupt? Like is it? We'll hire the best people we can regardless of where they are. So I don't think there's a kind of situation like if you're an engineer here, everyone wants you.
Yeah.
Everyone wants you. Everyone's fighting for you. So there isn't this kind of thing where if we hire someone from Silicon Valley as opposed to here, that we somehow deprive someone here of a job. In fact, what we did was we probably added to the pool of talent that exists here and made the pie bigger for everyone. So no, I don't think it's disruptive to hire people from abroad.
No, I don't either, but I was wondering if you felt like you were competing not just in the local economy, but you were competing with like all of the people in the tech space in the, in the domestic market because that's how fluid the market is in town.
Yeah, I think that's particularly true when it comes to experience, software as a service, veterans who understand how this space works. Probably that applies there. Like, there's not a lot of SaaS CFOs that understand how to use finance as a competitive advantage as a driver of growth, and who are used to accounting for everything, page views, leads, everything, not just finance, and who are not just managing what happened historically and closing out the books of the month, but also sitting at the growth table and using finance as a growth lever. Like, who can do that in a high transaction volume business like LeadPages with a bunch of small customers with a built-in level of churn that's just part of dealing with or serving small and medium-sized businesses. Like, there's just not a lot of those people, right? So at any given time, there's like maybe 4 of them on the job market, and everyone's fighting for them. And we got one out of GoDaddy. He's amazing. Is Jason Heath here? Like, I thought he was going to come. Yeah, we probably had to duke it out for that guy with a bunch of other people. In fact, so like that happens. But I think when it comes to individual contributor roles, yes, there's a talent war, but I wouldn't say that the scope of that is necessarily national.
Thanks, it's been great. Well, you mentioned, were you next? Go ahead. You mentioned that your you mentioned that your energy level comes from focusing on what you do the best.
Yeah.
So, what are the things? What's the most effective use of your time, or what is a typical day week look like for you?
Yeah, great question. So,
What time do you start?
I don't know. I have 2 goals. I work on the business and I try not to get divorced, or try not, so I do better than that. That was a joke. I'm just being present to my wife and being present to the business. Like that's what I do, and then try and like stay healthy. So that's really, and then sleep. That's my life basically, and I love it. It's great. In terms of how I spend my day, I think there's what a CEO needs to be doing. There's 3 simple things: make sure there's enough money in the bank, make sure that you're recruiting talent, and make sure that you're communicating the vision. And if you're doing those 3 things, everything else, just hire pros, hire professionals to do it. So that's what I focus on, some version of that, all day long. Yeah.
So when you first started out, I'm sure there was a point where, you wore every single night company where you were doing everything. So how did you kind of start rolling out and delegating tasks to other people? Even beyond Brazil and in India, how did you kind of build your team?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I had a co-founder, and she is amazing. And she handled operations and culture is everyone's job, but HR and operations kind of fell under her. And I was marketing and product, and we had a technical co-founder as well. And my job was just to create scalable revenue systems. So I started out by creating these like crazy videos about our product where I would just show another feature in every video, and those worked. So I hired someone to create video. Then we were doing these webinars, and we would get 30% of people who joined our webinar to end up buying our product. So then I hired someone to scale webinars for us. And then we had a blog, and the blog was working. So I just hired someone to scale the blog. And so I was just hunting for new channels. And I was channel hunting, and then once I got to the point where it was working, I hired a professional to come in and sort of optimize and scale that. And we did the same thing with engineering as well. So it was just finding things that work, and the second we figured out the mechanics of that thing that worked, I hired someone to come in and just take that over so I could move on to the next thing.
So you basically had playbooks for all the
Yeah.
activities that were then generated, and you didn't have to deal with it anymore.
Right. I mean, it's very hard to bring someone in, when you're that early, it's hard to find people who can come in who can create complete success from scratch. So if you can have some amount of success that can be scaled, that's a really positive thing.
Okay, so with all the success that you've brought to Minneapolis, do you have plans to have your roots continue to grow in Minneapolis, or are you going to open up other offices, or
Yeah.
why Minneapolis?
Yeah, you know, I love Minneapolis. This is my favorite city.
Good.
I think there's a lot of great things and there's a lot of bad things, and I think we're like far too obsessed as a community of talking about the impact of location on the success of startups. And I think that entrepreneurs just get it done. They're going to get it done or they're not. And it really, like complaining about your thing not being successful because of your location is like the least entrepreneurial thing I can ever manage. Like whoever does that, like just de facto, you are probably not cut out to be a founder if you're like blaming the failure of your startup on location. Or like by the time you're doing that complaint, you should have moved somewhere. Like freaking move, like get out of here. Don't be a victim of circumstance. So you know, I think we talk far too much about the role of location. But your question was like, what do you like about it and what are you doing here and all that stuff. So I love it here. I think, you know, to a large extent we've raised at Silicon Valley valuations and we get to spend it here. So there's kind of an arbitrage thing. You know, in my sort of people in our portfolio who are in Silicon Valley are getting like 30% employee turnover on a given year. 30% of their employees will leave and go to another startup. So there's this incredible churn that's happening out there that we're not dealing with. You know, people come and they like it and they stay and that's awesome. So I like that. I think there's a lot of smart, hardworking people here, and you know, at the end of the day, it's where we are, and it's served us really well. We've had lots of success here, so there's something here that must have contributed to our growth, but we just don't spend a lot of time thinking about location in general. Like it just is what it is, and once you've decided that this is where you're going to be, and you've invested in an office, you know, it just doesn't come up a lot. But I don't know that we have plans to be anywhere else ever. In fact, I think it would be pretty detrimental to the business. I mean, what happens when you are successful is you have these set of circumstances that contributed to your success. And I think the last thing you want to do is disrupt all of that because you perceive the grass to be greener somewhere else. And it's like, funding was no problem here, hiring was no problem here, growth was no problem here, getting space was no problem here. Everything seems to be much less friction, or much, you know, there seems to be much less friction for getting things done here than in Silicon Valley. So this is where we want to be right now.
That's cool. That's great to hear. Well, I think we pretty much are coming to the end of our event.
Okay.
So just want to know, does anyone else have any other questions? I want to make sure they all get answered because it is an honor to have you here. I know you're ridiculously busy.
Everyone's ridiculously busy, but I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Anyone else? Okay. Well, one other thing real quick, I just want to let you know I will be having another event from when I work. We'll have Chad Halverson, so we're excited about that. But again, thank you so much. Really appreciate you coming here and sharing your wisdom, and I know that I learned a lot. So, thank you.